Welcome to the second podcast of 2394. My name is Commander Kelrod from the USS Veritas, and I'd like to take this golden opportunity to welcome all of the graduates since our last podcast. This time I'll list them by the ship they're assigned to. On the USS Tha, we have Ensign Stasos and Ensign Talesa Naak Kaidun. On the USS Constitution B, we have Ensign Choi Ji-hu, Ensign Damian Winter, and Ensign Lara Grayson. On the Andaris Task Force, we have Ensign Anath Jiren, Ensign Sorel Kaidun, and Ensign Lailani Antori. Finally, on StarBase 118, we have Ensign Logan Rostov. Welcome to the fleet. Welcome to the adventure. Now we'll hear some news from the FNS. This time it will focus on the USS Constitution B, about its activity through February and March. Let's hear what Lieutenant Commander Mira Etho has to share with us.
This February, the FNS ship in focus is the USS Constitution B. Lenara and Hinji begin intense negotiations. Our location is StarBase 104, where the crew of the USS Constitution is hosting negotiations in the Marchlands. The Lenara and Hinji are two very different species, but they have one thing in common. They need a new place to live. Both species have the right to the same planet, and this has caused tensions between them. Enter the Federation negotiations. Although the USS Constitution NCC 902-B was enjoying a family reunion at Starbase 11, Captain Jelana Rigel and her crew were forced to cut the celebrations short to handle this matter. The negotiations are being held at Starbase 104 in the Marchlands. Starbase 104 is nestled near the Lambada cluster, near the Beta Quadrant. The Marchlands are surrounded by Tholian and Klingon space, and is not the normal mission region for the Constitution crew. Orders are orders, however, and word has it that the crew is excited about the prospect of a new area. Southland Station is pleased to welcome the crew of the Constitution, as well as Lenara and Hinjani representatives on board. It is an honor to host these negotiations, and we hope that all parties are able to come to a suitable agreement, shared Captain Inaro Miyabi, the commanding officer of 104. After arriving to the station, several of the crew were free to roam the immense starbase. Rigel and her first new officer, Commander Sarah Mason, immediately set to work on the conference room that would be holding the negotiations. Security officers began routine security sweeps, and all seemed to be going well. As both the Lenari and the Hinji representatives arrived, the Constitution and Starbase 104 crew could only hope that everything went smoothly. This March, the FNS ship in focus is once again the USS Constitution B. The mysterious sickness puts a halt to peace talks and lands the Constitution captain into sickbay. The location is still aboard Starbase 104, where crews are working overtime to compensate for attacks from the inside. Last time we met the crew of the USS Constitution NCC 9012-B, they had arrived at Starbase 104 in the Marchlands, where they are now hosting peace talks between two species sharing the Lenaran system, the Hinji and the Lenara. Lenarans who live in complete darkness, and the Hinji who are able to shift into animal form, both desire to expand their area of living to the last habitable planet in the system. Much to the distress of the delegates, both species are split when it comes to this topic. While there are groups that would have no problem to share the planet, a high amount of people from both species do not wish to live in the same place as the other. A long history of distrust and tension lead to the brink of war, which they now attempt to avoid through the talks. President Sotesa Vehu of the Lenaran people and Luco Silvertip, ambassador of the Hinji people, came together with Captain Jelana Rigel, Commander Sarah Mason, and Counselor Turek of the Constitution to negotiate. But things took a turn for the worst. Under mysterious circumstances, members of the delegation and inhabitants of the station have begun to fall ill. The station's personnel has both hands full to deal with the situation and has called the docked ship for their help as the situation escalates by the minute. As if that wasn't enough, the Linaran district that lies in complete darkness to accommodate their needs has suddenly been flooded with light, hurting countless Linarians and their visitors, who later took injuries of their eyes with them as they wore night vision goggles to get around. Apparently, the emergency light system throughout the entire level has been turned on to full brightness and can't be disabled, Ensign Liara Klein from the station security department told us, followed by the chief of security, who stated, "I thought that couldn't happen. They'd been disabled save for the exceptional circumstance." As of right now, it is not clear who is behind either of these events, but the Constitution crew is working together with the crew of Starbase 104 to find the culprits and bring normal life back to the station.
Excellent. Now we know more about the amazing adventures of the USS Constitution B. Now we have Lieutenant Commander Sabrina Hawley that brings us an interview with Ensign Choi Ji-hu, or Choi Ji-hu, depending on your pronunciation.
Hi, my name is Lieutenant Commander Sabrina Hawley, and I'm here with Ensign Choi Ji-hu for the Starbase 118 Interview with an Ensign project. And this time around, we're doing a special ship in focus for the USS Constitution B. Let's start with a few questions to get the ball rolling. First off, what is your duty post?
My duty post is engineering.
Ooh, engineering. You know, I started as an engineer.
Where are you
on
now?
The USS Atlantis.
Oh, what post are you in now?
I'm first officer of the USS Athena.
Excellent, so you're command.
I am command.
Jeez.
But this isn't about me. So,
right.
How long have you been with the fleet?
Just a couple months now. I started, it's strange to think, but I started just in, I think, mid-February.
Mid-February, wow. How did you feel when you got that welcome letter from your CO?
It was so exciting. Because I remember that I was literally like, I was probably like way too keen in like academy and like the final test and everything. I was literally I remember sitting around all weekend, being like, when am I going to get the letter? When am I going to get the letter? When am I going to get the letter? And then when I finally got the letter and I could like talk to the person who suggested that I join and be like, I got that Constitution. So yeah, I was way too keen, ready to go.
Awesome. Your captain is Jelana, right?
That's right.
Are you in constant contact with her?
Yeah, I love her because she is like way too friendly and kind and nice and generous, and I feel like we added each other on like Google Chats, and so every once in a while we'll just bother the other one just to be like, this is going on, this is going on, this is going on, but also like talk about normal human things like or like real life stuff as well. So it's like lovely that like right off the bat I sort of like made a friend on my ship. So it was like a really positive experience.
I do that with my captain all the time.
Yeah, I probably overshared a little bit already, despite the fact that I've only known her for like 2.
It's okay. Happens all the time, trust me. What do you like most about your ship so far?
I feel like I was talking with Jelana, and I described this as like a ship of like, even know, a ship of like weird dorks. Like we're such a, I'm assuming it's kind of the same on every ship, but just such like strange personalities, and they're all just like way too nice as they go about their duties. So I think that like the description of like a bunch of kind dorks fits the ship really, really well. So right now we're on a diplomatic mission aboard a starbase, and we're negotiating with a couple of Federation races who are attempting to colonize a planet. We don't know how that will turn out, and so it's just like I'm reading through. I'm not part of the diplomatic team, but I'm reading through all their posts, and I'm just like, Oh, they're all so nice. Like my character, it wouldn't be in my character's nature to be like super aggressive or angry or anything, but they're all just very, very polite. So it's interesting to be dealing with a really dramatic situation, but see everybody, all of the characters being very, very kind, going about their duties.
That's awesome. We're actually just coming off of our mission.
What was yours?
Very complicated.
as they usually are.
Ours was supposed to be simple, and it didn't turn out simple.
Well, ours is like there's been like mass poisonings that we're sort of like figuring out what's going on. And this is like all in the span of a day, so it's ridiculous. There's been like mass poisonings. There's been a light attack because one of the races, they can't stand, like they're very photosensitive. They can't stand light. So there's been a light attack on an entire section of the starbase. And then my character and a couple of others ended up getting put in the brig accidentally. And this is his very like it's still sort of in game speaking, still his very first day aboard the Constitution. So he has already ended up in the brig, despite the fact that he's like a goody two shoes. So it's been an experience. Sorry,
wow.
what was that? Yeah.
I said, and a senior officer.
Yeah, right.
Name 3 things you love about the 118 community since you joined us.
Sure. Oh, wow. It's like
aside from the ship itself.
Yeah, aside from the ship itself, I think that one thing that did really that really like made me want to join when I was first introduced was I think it is really fantastic that there's a lot of LGBT representation throughout the entire fleet, and it was really heartening for me to see that like everybody's characters, even aboard the Constitution, seem like very just like casual and very open to exploring like same-sex relationships and like romances. I one of the very first profiles I think that I ever ended up on was Captain Renos, who plays a deviant Janai, who like again, I just think it's great that the fleet is so open to LGBT characters and exploring those themes. Some other things. I used to do forum role playing when I was in high school, and it was definitely a creative outlet for me at the time because I could come from a small town and there weren't a lot of creative outlets for me, especially for creative writing. I think that's another thing that definitely really drew me to StarBase 118 was the creative element of things. And it's just been incredible to be able to be all of the writing that I've done so far for my Sims has been really fantastic experiences. I think and then another part of that, probably the third thing that I really love is the actual the role-playing elements, because I can't imagine anything more fun than writing something where you have somebody on the other end who is going to like either go along with what you're doing or throw a wrench into the works and sort of like pull the action in a completely different direction that you wouldn't have expected at all. So yeah, I'd say that those are definitely the 3 things that I love most about the community. The creativity and diversity of the community.
Awesome. Now, here's going to be the question you're going to love.
Oh dear.
Your aspirations for command.
Right. That's a really good question. And it's something that I've been thinking a lot about because so in Choi's backstory, he did a double major in engineering and science at the academy. He definitely veers more towards the engineering side of things, and especially with computational systems. So I think that he is definitely going to explore the sciencey side of things as well. I would love to either join and be part of, or at least take part in some missions where sort of like the science and science fiction-y focus is like a really big part of it, like a discovery and sort of what am I trying to even say, just like discovery and get into like sort of like the real out there science fiction stuff that Star Trek can go towards. On the diplomatic mission, a lot of it has been politics and sort of like the races, sort of the ways that they are either supportive of Starfleet or are not so supportive of Starfleet. I would really love to either join the command of a crew or just be part of missions where the science fiction-y aspect is a lot stronger. I've sort of been exploring some of the other ships or previous missions where that's been a thing. So I love the idea of command of a science vessel, which is probably the only place where Choi would ever be in command, because he's such an awkward loser. So unless his like expertise was sort of at the forefront, he would definitely be the kind of person who would be like taking the background and just wanting to be part of the team.
But what are your OOC aspirations for command? I mean, do you have a plan to move up in the OOC ranks?
I don't even really know much about it. Like I feel like I'm so new to it that I don't even really I just have a vague idea of what. Oh, so you mean as part of the community?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Jelana's already talked with me about being part of the, well, so maybe that I'm not as sort of ignorant about this side of things. So she's talked with me about joining the Image Collective, because I mean, I sort of play around in Photoshop a lot, and I really love doing that. So I would love to be able to offer those services to the community. I believe that I'm going to be joining the Top Sims contest judge panel for the Constitution for the next cycle, I believe. So that's really exciting to me as well. Beyond that, I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't really given it much thought yet, but I'm really like, it's a fantastic community. I'm so excited to be part of it and be more about it. So I'm super open to just like being there for people and helping them out. I would love to also like help welcome new people into the group as well, because I'm trying to remember what his title was, but Maxwell Trainer was the person, sort of like my go-to person when I first joined the Constitution, and he was just super amazing and supportive, and just had nothing but kind words to say to me. So I would love to be able to be that for new players as well.
I think Trainer is Lieutenant Commander.
Right.
You can't be part of the training team unless you are a lieutenant or lieutenant commander.
So then I'm definitely
at the very minimum.
Yeah. Right. I'm definitely gonna be gunning
you
for
would
that.
need to read the promotion guide, which can be found. You can ask Jelana where that is.
Right.
I'm sure she can help you figure that out.
Yeah, all I know
it's
so
her
far
job.
is that I'm definitely like I'm on track to the promotion to lieutenant junior grade. So I mean, you know, it's all happening. It's just I feel like I am still super new and just sort of getting my footing in all of the process.
And the Image Collective actually ties into my next question, which was going to be, are you currently part of an OSC task force?
Not yet.
So not yet, but you're
yeah.
on track for getting into the Image Collective and the Top Sims panel.
That's right.
I've actually done the Top Sims panel, and obviously I'm on the podcast team.
Yeah.
But I've also done some publicity work, so and I'm also on the training team. So
oh, cool! That's awesome.
But I don't usually CO or FO. Usually I'm only a mock, but I have been known to do both. So I guess the next question would be, is your character currently involved in a story arc with another player?
Yeah, so at the moment we're sort of I feel like in the sort of arc of the story for his first day aboard the Constitution, He is so right now he is on the bridge, sort of coordinating the engineering team, sort of being like an operator type role, as a bunch of engineering teams are helping the StarBase deal with some issues that have come up. So funny enough, the another Lieutenant Solaris McLaren, who's an intelligence officer, she's sort of she's sort of leading the bridge at the moment because our captain has been incapacitated, which is very, very dramatic and sort of terrifying for the entire crew. So he has been doing a lot of work with her, and he's actually had some interactions with her when he first arrived on the Constitution about how he has some skills with decoding and encryption and those sorts of things. And so at the moment he's doing a little bit of work with Solaris McLaren to figure out where this illicit substance that he believes incapacitated the captain and is causing this sort of mass poisoning has come from. So he's doing a little bit of I think I mentioned it in our Discord chat as my cheap cyberpunk like hacker fantasies. So that's sort of where I'm at right now, and it's been McLaren has been very, very accommodating in those sorts of posts that I've been doing. As I think that it's one thing that I'm really enjoying about the experience is that despite the fact that I'm engineering, I've had like some sort of interactions that have to do more with the science side of things. And I'm also getting to explore a little bit of intelligence side of things. And I know that sort of another way that I can end to occupy those roles more is once I move up in a rank, I can start bringing some PNPCs into things as well to explore those things. So I am really excited about that as well.
So said something about a friend who referred you.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How did you find the fleet? You said something earlier about a friend referring you to the fleet?
Yeah, so it's really fun actually. I run a couple of tabletop role-playing games, including D&D Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and so one of my players is Braden Jory, who I can't remember his current role. I know we've been talking a lot right now, and he's actually I think he just completed his test for command, but I can't remember what his current rank is. But anyways, Braden Jory of the Duronis Embassy, he's one of my players in one of the D&D games that I run, and so we had like finished a D&D session, and we were just like, everybody was like collecting their things and heading out, and he was like, do you like Star Trek? Are like you a fan of Star Trek? And I was like, oh, I've watched like a little bit of it, but I've never gotten super, super into it. And he was like, I'm about to show you this thing, and I have a feeling you're going to be really, really into it. And so like he sat down, and I like opened my laptop, and he was showing me the wiki, and he was showing me like his character and some other characters, and just sort of explained to me how the entire thing worked. And I was like, yeah, this is totally my thing. Anything that sort of combines like world building with sort of like what we know as simming, which is like, role playing with other characters. It's just totally my thing. And so he's been great as well because aside from a really, really supportive like staff and really supportive fellow crew members, he's been great because I've been able to go with him with any like really, really stupid questions, or just to, get his perspective on things as well. And he was really excited when I got my assignment to the Constitution, and he's also been very, we've been chatting about possibly having some NPCs who are related, which I think would be really, really fun. So they'd be like possibly like brothers or twins on separate ships, but they could possibly be in contact with each other every once in a while. So So I think that he's been great, and then there's been a lot there, and it's really fun that he's one of my players in Dungeons and Dragons, and then he is a fellow Starfleet officer who my character has never had any contact with at all. But at the same time, I can still sort of check in on him. Great.
That's awesome. Braden Jory is an amazing person.
Yes.
So I guess my next question is, how long have you been a gamer?
Oh my gosh. Well,
obviously this is not your first RPG.
No, it is not. Yeah, certainly my entire life as far as the broad gaming in the broad sense. Like I said earlier, I got really into forum role playing when I was in high school. I think it was part of an anime message board, but they had this weird little section that was all of these strange little role plays, none of them necessarily anime related. So I participated in a couple of those and was super into that side of things. And then that sort of fell away just into general gaming, and I got super into tabletop role playing games when I was in my early 20s. I joined a Dungeons and Dragons group, and it's just sort of been an obsession of mine since then. So I run 2 D&D groups. I'm a player in another, and so in the group that I am a player in, we're actually talking, one of the other players is a huge Star Trek fan, and I'm trying to get him to join StarBase 118 because he'd be amazing at it. But he and I are talking about running a non-D&D role-playing game with that group that's based in the Star Trek universe. So all that to say, I'm a humongous gaming nerd, and yeah, that's about it.
What's your favorite Star Trek show or movie?
So this is the thing, is that I have always been a fan of it, the little that I've seen, but I've never actually worked through all of the series so far. So at the moment, I'm working through the Next Generation to then go on to Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and then maybe go through some of the other series as well. But right now, I'm only, I think I'm almost at the end of season 4 of the Next Generation. So and then I've seen all of the the newer Star Trek movies, and I enjoy those for what they are as well. But I think that now that I've watched a significant amount of the Next Generation, one of my absolute favorite episodes is Suddenly Human, which is the Next Generation episode where they have the interactions with the Talarians, and they find out that one of the characters, one of the Talarians is actually a human child who just happened to be brought into Talarian culture, basically adopted into it. So I'm actually that was one of my favorite episodes, and I'm going to be in tabletop role playing game that this friend of mine and I are putting together. I actually want to play a Talarian because I love the race. I love the characters. I really love playing characters who have major personality flaws. So Talarian culture, super sexist and patriarchal and very, very xenophobic. So especially with that group, I think that'll be a really fantastic character to pit against the others.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So, bringing back to coming full circle, is there something that you'd like to see more of in your ship or the community?
Yeah, I think it's still been it's so early on that aside from reading a few recaps of some previous missions, I just don't really know what to expect. I'd like to see more of. Yeah, I would love to. I'm excited for, because our entire mission that I've been a part of so far has all been based on a starbase. So I'm really excited to get out and to experience some dangers of deep space and see what comes of that. But aside from that, in the community, I'm not really sure. It's been a generally positive and welcoming community so far that I think that you just rarely see online, at least. So I can't really think of anything off the top of my head other than like more sci-fi nerdiness is all that I require of the StarBase community.
All right. Well, all right. Here's a question that threw my last interviewee.
Oh
If
dear.
you got promoted tomorrow, how would you feel?
Promoted to the next level up or like
Yeah,
promoted?
like Lieutenant Junior grade. If you got promoted to Lieutenant JG tomorrow, how would you feel?
Right. Like I myself would be super happy. I'd be really excited, and like just from what would then come of that, and to sort of like start branching out into some places where I want to see the character go. Like me as a player would be super excited. Choi Ji-hu, on the other hand, would be like completely horrified that he is in any kind of position of power or command, even if it's like the next level up from ensign. He would be like terrified, and he'd probably want to basically just like find the deepest part of main engineering and hide from everybody else. So that's definitely my answer for that one. Me happy, character horrified.
To be fair, that's kind of how I felt when I first got promoted.
Right.
So my first character was kind of thrown into the deep end.
Right. Well, which is like apparently a pretty like common thing. Like I was talking with Jelana, and she was like, "Oh yeah, my first day aboard my first starship, I was like an ensign. I was ensign medical, and I ended up like basically being in charge of sick bay in the middle of like a medical crisis because the other team was all somewhere doing something else." And I was like, yeah, that's like, I mean, that's what we're all about, I guess, right? Is like basically throwing our characters into like the messiest situations ever and like seeing where they go with that. So like Choi getting thrown in the brig on his first day of the Constitution was probably the most horrifying thing that could have ever happened to him. And it was fun because like one thing I'm exploring a lot with the character is his just social and general anxiety. And so he basically had a panic attack and had to go to the chief medical officer, who he's had a couple of positive interactions with, and the chief medical officer talked him down from a panic attack, which was like super fun to sim. I really enjoyed it. So I think that's what we're all about with StarBase 118.
Definitely. So, are you feeling confident in your ability to carry out your personality and your character's personality as opposed to when you first started your first week on your ship?
Yeah, I think that it's really, like, for me, it's really fun and easy to separate like what I want from the character with what the character actually wants himself, because they're both very different things. Like I obviously want him to like go on these like crazy adventures and just have like a fantastic time, whereas like the character himself wants the exact opposite of that. So it's really fun for me as like a writer and as a player to play with those tensions. And like the crew has been super accommodating as far as that, and a lot of them have like really picked up on the fact that he's like super socially awkward and really terrified of social interactions. So that's been really amazing for me to see as well. Just like the fact that everybody picks up on things so easily and plays with them. There's been a couple of really great interactions because the character is Korean, like he's from Earth and he's from Seoul, and so his name follows like the Korean traditional standard where like the surname comes first and then his like given name comes last. And so both in training and then when he met Captain Rajal, like Jelana, both times in training and in that first introduction aboard the Constitution, they got his name wrong. And I have to imagine that that Jelana did it on purpose, like player wise, because it just had a really fantastic it meant a really fantastic interaction with her. So I think that as far as like what I want and what the character wants are working out really, really well already, despite the fact that I've been with the crew for such a short time.
That's awesome. All right. So next question. Do you spend time like on the forums?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
awesome. What's your favorite thread? Just pick pick
Yeah,
your favorite
absolutely.
thread.
So the Constitution is a really great one. It's called Constitution Social Media. So it's a bunch of sort of like sort of joke in character posts about like different characters using like Facebook or different characters using Twitter. Like other social media things as well. So there's been some really fantastic posts in that, and it's one that I check in with every once in a while because like some people will post really hilarious things, and especially once you get to know some of the characters, it just becomes sort of like even more ridiculous. So Commander Maxwell Trainer, his character has a beagle named Bark the Beagle who goes on adventures around the Constitution, and so there was a really great he did a really great post about how like it was Maxwell Trainer asking on Facebook, like posting a status that said, "How do beagles even get wet on starships?" And then there was a response from a dolphin in the cetacean pool, which the Constitution has, being like, "Have that strange seal visit us again sometime soon." And his response was like, "How do dolphins even use Facebook?" So I think that's definitely one of my favorite threads. It's also great because like I did a like one of my I posted something in just the general threads. I did like what would your character's Hogwarts house be, because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and there were some really great responses on that. And again, once I've gotten to know some of the characters, it's really fun to read their thoughts on that. So those are sort of the two that I've been lurking a lot. But I've also been following the top Sims as well, because it's really great to just read some of the other writing of characters around the fleet.
That's awesome. The Athena's not nearly as forum active as some of the other ships, but we're trying to fix that.
It's a great opportunity just to like, I don't know, just to joke around with everybody. Like I think that the social media is something that any ship could do really, really easily, because like I posted a couple of I've done a couple of posts as Choi using Twitter. And it's just really, I don't know, it's a great time. It's a great way to be like a nerdy cool kid, basically.
We might try that. So I know you spend a lot of time on Discord. Do you think that having the Discord chat is a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's super fun. I was sort of like hesitant to pick it up at first, just because I don't know, like I've been parts of communities online before where you sort of like every once in a while want to just like check in with people, or go in and see who's hanging out, but then like those kinds of like chat rooms basically they're sometimes like pretty dead, and it's sort of like sad when you go in and you're like, oh, nobody's hanging around. But I really like Discord because I sort of like keep it open running on the background, and every once in a while I'll just like check in and see who's like in the Constitution who's just hanging around, or see like what people are chatting about in the lobby room. So I think it's a fantastic way to just keep in touch and also like joke around and like get to chat with some of the other people in the fleet. And I also got to participate in my first fleet-wide chat last month, which was really, really fun as well. I think it was Salte Brim, who's Sharwyn Foster on our ship, led the discussion about characters, and was basically asking a bunch of questions about, character motivations and things like that. And it was really, really like just genuinely enjoyable to get to read other people's responses to that, to see what the sort of things that other people are thinking about in terms of their characters. Like that's super helpful to me as a new player.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't usually make it to the fleet-wide chats because I'm usually working weekends, but and it's really early in the morning for me.
Yeah,
But
yeah. That's the thing is like there are people all over the world. Like I mean, I've just seen on people's profiles that like some people are like in Malaysia and things like that, and I'm like, it's either you're in a convenient time zone or you're super dedicated.
challenge to coordinate your schedule with the fleet-wide chat if you're not
Yeah,
accustomed to it.
yeah.
If I want to attend a chat, I have to like set alarms or stay up all night.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think I've asked all of my questions. Do you have any questions for me while we're here?
I mean, like, I obviously want to know. I want to know all the answers to the questions that you asked about your character, but we'll have to do that another time.
Well, if you want to interview me for the podcast, well,
Yeah, I'll have to join the task force.
you can take a number.
Yeah, I'll do it.
We'll consider it. I know it's been brought to my attention before, but I haven't actually said yes to that one.
Not yet.
Maybe later. But I will tell you now that I'm an engineer, or
Excellent.
at least I was.
You were an engineer, but
now I'm a first officer.
Yeah. But the first officer could always make their way down to engineering to help out. So.
Very true indeed. I do have a bunch of PNPCs on the ship. I have a medical officer, who's been. He's kind of socially awkward a little bit, but he makes his way around.
It's sort of one thing I'm really excited about as far as PNPCs. So, like, this is sort of a total aside, but the StarBase that we're at right now, StarBase 104, had a bunch of basically mission specific NPCs that anybody could sort of like pick up and use if they needed to. And so I ended up having the chief science officer, who's an Aurelian, which is basically like giant bird people. I sort of I spearheaded creating his character to sort of create a scene with him, and then to introduce my character to Maxwell Trainer. But I ended up falling in love with this MSNPC, and so I've been chatting with Jelana about basically adopting him once I get up to Lieutenant Junior grade as sort of my first PNPC. And so again, it's like you said, you have a medical officer, so he'll basically be, if it ends up happening, be a science officer aboard the Constitution. And what will that mean for me? Which is I get to explore sciencey stuff with this really this funny little character who I never even would have thought up of if I hadn't just adopted him from the StarBase.
That is hilarious. Actually, my primary character right now started as my first PNPC. As one of my first PNPCs. She wasn't my actual first PNPC, but she was definitely one of my first PNPCs. Sabrina Holly. I created her. I created her on the USS Atlantis as a PNPC while I was playing Guinevere Gardner.
Right.
And her first day on the Atlantis, actually no, not her first day, but definitely within her first week, I had actually decided to kill my primary character because of some ship tension between me and another player. And I had Sabrina find the body.
Oh no.
And shortly after that, I had adopted another character that I had created, Lieutenant Sassy Cax. and she was an intelligence officer.
Mhm.
And that was my primary character at the time. And I had filed for a ship transfer.
Right.
And I actually got moved to the Constitution before,
cool.
under my current captain, before the Constitution got handed to Delano.
Right.
And I was the last member welcomed to the Constitution. And I played as Sassy for a little while as a security officer, I believe. Or no, I was a Marine, my bad.
Right.
Instead of an intelligence officer. And then a little later, I switched out my primary character to Sabrina once I promoted her to my rank as lieutenant. And then shortly after that, I got promoted to lieutenant commander as Sabrina Holly, and I've been playing her ever since.
You know what's so funny? So now that I'm on Sabrina Holly's wiki page, so for the initial test that you have to do to join the StarBase, like to basically like become show that you're interested in joining, and you have to do like the basically like the writing test to show that you can string a few sentences together. So I actually, as part of that writing test, I just sort of like picked a ship at random to be like, this is the ship that my character is part of, and I chose the Athena, and I included Sabrina Holly, and then I'm trying to think who the other character aboard the Athena was. I'm going to look at the crew roster really quickly. It was it was Lieutenant Dinara. So I actually in the little writing exercise I did, I had like Choi be part of an away team led by Dinara and Holly. So in full circle, in a way, Sabrina Holly was part of the reason why I'm chatting with you today. So there you go.
Well, I am wholeheartedly flattered by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the entire reason why I chose her specifically was I looked and saw that it was Hayden Panettiere, and I'm a big Hayden Pan. There you go.
Wow, go figure. I picked that picture almost at random,
right?
Because I was watching Bring It On Heroes almost back to back.
Right. I mean, she was great in Heroes. I can't even remember her in Bring It On, but
it was Bring It On. I think it was either All or Nothing or Fight to the Finish. One of those.
Anyways.
There were so many Bring It On movies, but she was in one of the Bring It On movies. And I was watching that particular Bring It On movie right after watching Heroes, and I'm like, I want her.
Yeah, I mean, she's gorgeous.
She is. But, I think we should go ahead and end our interview here. Cool. But it's been great interviewing with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I hope to have you on the podcast another day.
Anytime.
That was an amazing interview of Ensign Choi Ji-hu. Now we have another one with the science officer T'Reshik.
Hi, my name is Lieutenant Commander Sabrina Holly, and I'm here with Ensign T'Reshik for the StarBase 118 Interview with an Ensign project and the ship in focus for the USS Constitution B. Let's begin with a few questions to get the ball rolling. Describe your life growing up.
Well, that is a very imprecise question. Can I assume that you are asking for some kind of vague emotional summary rather than a detailed psychological analysis?
Sure, let's go with that.
Adequate. It was adequate.
All right then. Who would you say is your biggest inspiration and why?
Previously, I would have said my husband Sutek, a brilliant neurologist with decades of experience in his field. However, I did end up accidentally murdering him in the pursuit of scientific discovery, So I would say my current biggest inspiration is myself and my own scientific brilliance and potential.
Tell me, what is the best part about being a science officer?
The best part of being a science officer is being able to spend all my available time doing something I am very, very good at, and not having to socialise very much. If someone attempts to socialise with me, I usually tell them that I am performing urgent classified research, which they have no way of verifying. It is a perfect solution.
Tell me about what first interested you in a career with Starfleet.
Initially, it was a last-ditch attempt to buy time, as you might say. I had been performing an unauthorised experiment on myself, which perhaps we might come to later, and when I realised that my experiment was possibly going to kill me, I resolved to gain access to Starfleet scientific resources in the hope of delaying the inevitable.
How did you join the fleet?
I spoke to a recruiter and applied to Starfleet Academy. How else does one join the fleet?
Please tell me about your expertise, both as a science officer and as a medical officer.
Medicine is, and always has been, my area of interest, but I am told that my bedside manner left much to be desired. Obviously, this is completely irrelevant. My job was to cure diseases, not make friends with them. Now I have been accepted back into the fleet. Following my brief prison sentence, I specialise in chemistry and biochemistry, which was also what I specialised in during medical school. I am a highly qualified individual.
Tell me about your greatest accomplishment thus far in your career.
I believe that would be successfully convincing Starfleet that I was not siphoning off medical supplies for several years and using them illicitly, which of course I was. Which does not sound like as much of an accomplishment when I say it out loud, but... Shall we move on to the next question?
Describe some of the short-term and long-term goals. Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
I admit I have given it little thought since I was released from prison. I am taking it as it comes, as you might say. I might get a cat.
It's my understanding that you are working to develop a compound that can control Pon Farr. Please describe the theory behind this compound.
I was working on this compound. I could conceivably be working on it again at some point. I believe the theory is far too complicated for your listeners to understand, but in short, it is essentially a mechanism for preventing the reuptake of certain hormones into the brain. What happens is that the body produces chemical messengers to instruct itself to grow or to behave in certain ways. The chemicals responsible for that particular condition mostly act upon brain tissue, and what my compound did was to harmlessly block the receptors in the brain so that it was not affected. I say harmlessly. I did kill 2 people. Evidently it needs more work.
Tell me about your experience as a science officer aboard the Constitution so far.
I am still relatively new. I have not had much of an opportunity to use my extensive skills. My colleagues seem largely capable. Obviously, the sickbay staff are far less qualified than I am, but I will attempt not to hold them to my standards.
Describe your most recent mission and the role you played in it.
Unfortunately, that information is classified, but it did involve expropriating somebody's ship without permission. Expropriating? Is that the correct word? The Federation standard English word that basically means stealing. It is fine, we gave it back.
Do you have a favorite quote? If so, what quote is it, and why is it your favorite? How does the quote reflect your personal beliefs?
I do not. Literature is a waste of time. I have a favourite chemical compound, if that would suffice.
Okay, sure.
That would be astioban, or C43H67N11O12S2.
And that is what exactly?
It blocks oxytocin uptake. Oxytocin is the chemical partially responsible for feelings of warmth and affection.
All right, I think that about wraps up our interview. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Following those interviews, we have a joint pause between 2 characters on 2 different ships. One is on the USS Gorkon, and the other one is on the USS Darwin. Let's see what this cross-ship joint pause brings us.
Understanding of the Species, a StarBase 118 sim written by LtCmdrs Icavoc and Skyfire. It had been a while now since Chithar's return from hell. The strange sensation of a real bed, the full 8 hours or so of sleep per night, the comforting presence of the beagle,
and a working replicator still felt a wee bit alien. Not nearly as strange as it had the first night he was back, but still not quite routine just yet. It was a long relearning curve, and it would take time before it all felt normal again. Subspace call from the Darwin. Lieutenant Commander Icavoc, USS Darwin. Chaythar blinked and scratched his head curiously as he pulled on a shirt and walked over to his desk. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Wonder what they want, he thought. On screen. The screen flickered to life and displayed a rather disturbing set of blue eyes, the kind of icy blue that reminded him of Azin. It was disturbing in the amount of resemblances: blue eyes, black hair, and Dokkarin. The two reassuring features that made this the more pleasant were that this one was wearing red and was a lieutenant commander. CD blinked once, but then found his tongue in short order. Commander, to what do I owe the pleasure? I would ask you the same thing. I believe you wanted to discuss a matter with me. Niku Icavoc shifted his weight. His voice was serene and even as ever, but a faint smile and sparkling blue eyes conveyed a sense of friendliness and amusement. He couldn't really blame LtCmdrs Skyfire for being surprised. He had tried to get in touch some time ago, unsuccessfully. That was the way it was with Starfleet. People were always busy, and the last year had been challenging for the Darwin's crew from start to end. It was only now that they were on leave on Trill awaiting new orders that he finally had free time and was at a loss for how to use it. Chaythar thought for a moment. Had he put in a request for that? Oh yes, now he remembered. Captain Reynolds had mentioned putting him in touch with someone who wasn't Azin, but was of that species to aid in his search for comprehension. It made sense now, sort of. In a few hours it might make more sense, but for now it was enough. Right, sorry, I momentarily forgot. Okay. He paused and took a breath before beginning to explain the basics of what had happened. So what I'd like to know from you is it possible for an ancient memory to cause blindness in your species upon awakening from hibernation? With Dokkaran, each individual was born with all the knowledge they needed to get started in life. No two individuals were blessed with exactly the same knowledge. Niku had been born with a botanical and zoological knowledge, and had a love of science. It was his thirst for knowledge and concern about the threat represented by the Borg that drove him to enlist in Starfleet, and learn about the galactic threats beyond his own world, so that he might bring back knowledge to his people of how to defend themselves. It took many years, but he did achieve that goal, and later retrained at Starfleet Academy to take up a career as a scientist. He had walked many paths, and it was the knowledge bestowed upon him at birth that started him along it. Niku knew of others who were blessed with the knowledge of their young species' history. Indeed, there were a few individuals from those early days who still lived. They were among the species' eldest members, and showed no signs of slowing down. Yet no one knew the natural lifespan of a Dokkaran, as none had died from old age. Disease and disaster had claimed them, but not time itself. Niku looked down and fell silent as he searched his memories. This was one of the most intriguing and unique questions he'd ever been asked. While he was no medic, his background in biology, alongside all the work he'd been doing with Dr. Pond and scientific colleague Merrick Brevin, gave him a considerable understanding of his species. I've never heard of it, nor can I think of any way it would be biologically possible given all I know of my kind. What makes you ask? That was a difficult question for Chaythar to answer, and to explain it would just be weird. Well, here's hoping. My circumstances. I was told long after the incident that I had a predisposition to the genetic mutation for the possibility of becoming telepathic. It wasn't until after I assisted with this thing that I became such. One of your people came to me with sensory difficulties of sight and collapsed in my arms. My nervous system became linked with his, and he mentioned my mental resistance was impressive for a human. It took both of us a moment to recover from the inciting incident, but he wished my assistance in combating a memory of someone named Vesa. After that second melding, which was actually the one which rewrote my genome, that's when Chithar paused and took a very long breath, silent for a few moments as he tried to recall the events which practically killed him the first time. When this link broke, I was transformed, and the patient's sight was restored. I received an initial rating of T2/E2, meaning that I was a non-contact telepath, an empath with other humans. It wasn't until later that year my abilities changed again to my current rating of T4/E6 through a different incident not involving one of your people, but the linking of minds with that patient had messed with me in ways I didn't imagine. It was an incredible tale, one Niku had to consider very carefully. His people were capable of performing what some had likened to a sort of Vulcan mind meld. He had melded once or twice with other members of his own race he was chasing or being chased by. It was considered a most intimate act. In fact, the most intimate act between individuals. He knew it to be possible to meld with others not of his own species. All he had to do was attune his nervous system to theirs, though he'd never done it. One had to be very careful with such things, as most minds could be easily overwhelmed by it. He could see a situation in which a meld might occur through unintended or even involuntary means, and perhaps that is why it had occurred in this case. It felt like he didn't yet have all the pieces for the puzzle, however, and Niku hoped Skyfire would not be offended by his questions. "And you are human?" "Forgive me, but there are so many distinct species who look alike on the surface but are different enough genetically for it to be significant." "Correct," Chithar answered. "Full human, born on Earth, with no history of reader ancestry. Only the predisposition for a telepathic mutation somewhere in my genome which emerged after the meld." He still wasn't sure what it was called with Icavoc's race. It was a bizarre experience. He didn't really know how to explain. But he'd experienced a few melds since. It was different each time. "Any hybrid DNA?" Icavoc asked. Humans were not known for being a species capable of telepathy or empathy, and the brain anatomy of those that were had specific biological foundations that made such things possible. Skyfire's direct parents might both be human, but if there was a telepathic species, maybe a betazoid somewhere in the family tree above him, then perhaps it would account for his genetic predisposition that had been mentioned. His brain might be just slightly different enough to a regular human with no hybrid family history to explain how this was physiologically possible. "None that I know of," Chithar answered. "According to my colleague Dr. Savron, he couldn't find any. Just the predisposition." One of the reasons Niku had joined Starfleet was to learn more about the species his had been modeled on. At the birth of their species, they had been granted forms similar in appearance to Lieutenant Evangeline Dell and Ensign Christian Alanzar, the first individuals to meet the lady. He was no human or doctor, so while he wasn't aware humans had any predisposition for this type of thing, he had to accept it at face value. He was sure both Skyfire and Savron had looked into this extensively, so the only insight he could give was about his own kind, which, thankfully, was what the humans seemed to be after. The answer had filled in a few more gaps, allowing him to analyze the situation. After several more minutes of contemplation, he could draw only one conclusion, and perhaps this had already been considered too. It is not physiologically possible for telepathic abilities to be passed along, you might say, in the manner you describe, even with a genetic predisposition and a bad melding. That is to say, one that was not deliberately and very carefully and purposefully executed. Of this, Niku was quite confident. A bad meld could turn someone into a vegetable and shut down pathways in their mind. He didn't know the details about the memory concerning Vesa. It was probably private and possibly traumatic. Knowledge was sacred among his people. He returned to the homeworld whenever he could to link with the lady and share all he had learned from academia and experience. The lady would then pass that along to other Dokkaran. By communing directly with the lady, he had on occasion gained insight directly from her that had first been learned by others among them. "There would have to be something else," Niku continued. "Another, probably unaccounted for, third factor. Perhaps it was also affecting the individual in your arms." It seemed most likely that if there was, Skyfire wouldn't have been aware of it at the time with being caught up in the moment and the mind meld. Such things could take you so far out of your reality that someone could come in, climb on your back, and you wouldn't be aware of it. Of course, with all the time that had passed from the incident, it was not something that could be easily checked either. It left him fearing that he could offer little help or closure about how exactly he had gained such fantastic abilities. Hopefully something he had been able to provide was of some use to the man. I'd say it was pretty purposeful and deliberate, given the scenario, Chithar answered. I'd asked him the same question, but he neither confirmed nor denied I would be altered by the experience prior to it happening, nor had he seemed to consider the possibility it would even be possible to trigger the existing predisposition of telepathy, polymorphing into limited abilities within my own species. The pain overwhelmed me and almost killed me. So whatever the third factor is, I hope you can figure it out and get back to me. Niku doubted anyone could have known beforehand what the long-term consequences would be, so the response was hardly surprising to him. He considered what he knew of the case, and as much as he wanted to be able to help, the information he had about the case was limited, and nothing jumped out at him. If something had been missed when the incident had originally occurred, they may never find out what this third factor might be. Skyfire had called with questions about how a Dokkaran mind meld could bring out telepathic and empathic abilities in him, and he had responded to the best of his knowledge as a scientist. Niku did not believe the mind meld was the cause of Skyfire's emerging telepathy. Certainly not on its own, as it was physiologically impossible. As much as I would love to help, I also don't want to fill you with false hope. There is nothing more I can give based on the information I have. Good luck with your search for the answer. As simplistic as the answer was, it also made Chithar rather sad to hear it. He was the first human he knew of with non-reader ancestry to have an awakening caused in this fashion. Since the commander could find no evidence in his species of being what could only be described as a first time, he kept his expression neutral as he spoke, deciding to wrap this up before writing a log entry. All right. Thank you for your time, Commander. Niku's response was quite sincere. I truly hope you find the answers you are looking for. Good day, Chithar Skyfire. Once the line closed, Chithar sat back in the chair and blew a strand of hair from his face. He now had something to report if Fleet Captain Reynolds made an inquiry on whether the Dokkaran contact got in touch. Granted, it wasn't particularly helpful, but it was at least contact. This made him the first case in Dokkaran history to have abilities awakened via such a meld. In any case, it was something to log for his next conversation with Lieutenant Uzo Omaka. With a sigh, he glanced up at the ceiling. Computer, begin recording. Today consisted of a conversation with another Dokkaran who wasn't a Zen to discuss my unique abilities. Such an awakening, which is the name I've given it, is physiologically impossible. Bad meld or not. So the third factor will remain a mystery, and I'm the first human in the history of their kind to have this happen. End recording. CD contemplated going to bug Alex and talk it out, but he had woken up just for this call. So maybe it was easier to go back to sleep instead. He heard the inquisitive ruff from the bed behind him, so it seemed like the answer was go back to bed. He left his desk and returned to the confines of his blanket and the reassuring presence of the beagle, leaving that mystery for another day. Meanwhile, on the Darwin, Niku Icavoc stood and paced. Was he mistaken? Was there some detail he had overlooked? For the next 3 hours, Niku reviewed all he knew about Dokkaran and human physiology and studied them both more closely, using the most up-to-date materials. The time he spent using advanced models and holo-imaging techniques led him to one conclusion. There had been no mistake. Whether this unknown factor was environmental or biological he could not tell from the information he had, and the possibilities for what it might be were almost limitless. It was disappointing that he could not be of more help to the doctor. It would be wonderful to be able to point to something and say, this is it. This is the reason these wondrous abilities emerged. Perhaps one day he would find the answer he was looking for.
Lieutenant Commander DeBow brings us another sim, this time from the USS Veritas, written by Evan Delano. The name of the sim is Investigation.
Investigation, a StarBase 118 sim by Evan Delano. A hot wind from the west blew over the plains on the outskirts of the settlement, causing the tall brown grass to wave over the horizon. A century ago, a Vulcan poet had dubbed the eastern grasslands the Amber Sea, and standing from a third-story landing platform, Evan found himself making the same comparison while he collected his thoughts. The vista was a valuable reminder of how beautiful this place could be. With that thought in mind, he turned back toward the bodies and debris. The stench of burned electronics and flesh threatened to turn his stomach, but he forced control. "The security footage?" he asked the settlement's port administrator, a middle-aged Romulan woman named Colleen. She had been staring at the wreckage since she'd called for his attention a few seconds earlier. The woman looked suitably flustered by the accident, and even as she processed his verbal cue, she had difficulty looking away from the carnage. "I've got it here, sir." Delano pressed his lips together at the honorific. Sehike's law enforcement was comprised almost entirely of civilian volunteers. Evan was an exception to that, if only because of his background. The elders had been concerned about some of the newest additions to the settlement, and had authorized the sheriff to deputize some of the experienced volunteers. And that was why Evan was here. He was the only deputy with significant experience with explosives. Despite the title, however, Evan disliked the idea of people calling him Sir. It reminded him of the life he'd left behind. Still, the woman had served on a Romulan warship until just a few years earlier. Evan knew better than most how difficult some habits were to break. "Thanks." He took the offered memory chip and plugged it into his scanning device. The device was larger than a modern tricorder and wasn't nearly as sophisticated, but it did its job well enough. This deep into the shadows, he wasn't about to complain. He tapped a few commands into the device, then used the small display to view the moments leading up to the explosion. He counted 4 men loading a medium-sized cargo freighter pushing an anti-grav unit containing a magazine of photon torpedoes. KDF configuration by the look of them, though Evan wouldn't know for certain until he did a more thorough analysis of the wreckage. The footage continued, and Evan watched as the men parked the anti-grav unit on the ship's cargo lift. One of the men tapped the controls to raise the platform to the ship's cargo bay. 15 seconds later, the ship's hull was blown open by an internal explosion. Though he'd take another look with a more sophisticated display, Evan saw nothing more than he'd expected to. The easiest explanation of the accident. A group of scavengers had acquired weapons and arranged to transfer them to another ship before returning to Shadow's Edge. Such activity was common here, and the elders allowed it in exchange for their discretion and occasional smuggling of passengers in and out of the settlement. The weapons had been unstable, or perhaps sabotaged, and now 4 men were dead. An unfortunate accident, perhaps, but nothing requiring a more in-depth investigation. And yet, Evan couldn't shake the sense that he was missing something. "I suppose we're lucky none of our people were up here." Evan offered a polite nod as he reviewed the readouts from his scanner again. "It might have been easier if they were." "What makes you say that?" "The agreement we have with the pirate factions. Sehike is supposed to be neutral territory for them. The fact that none of our people were here could be seen as evidence that no longer applies." The already pale woman blanched. "I see." Evan nodded his agreement, hearing the depth of understanding in her voice. Sehike was self-sufficient and could survive without the pirates, but only just. In the best-case scenario, there would still be some shortages, and given the rising tensions between the elders and some of the younger Rhea Lyalara, that could mean trouble. That rosy scenario assumed the pirates didn't try to retaliate. He continued the conversation while keeping most of his attention focused on the readouts from his scanning device. "Don't worry. It probably won't come to that. I just need to rule out the possibility of some kind of attack." Evan was pacing slowly around a piece of debris he'd managed to identify as one of the ship's cargo transporters. "I've been running this facility for 2 years now. We've never had an accident of this magnitude. How can you be sure it isn't some kind of attack?" He frowned as he recognized a familiar energy signature in what was left of the transporter's pattern buffer. "Do you know why they didn't use this to bring their cargo on board?" Colleen stepped closer as Evan crouched down. "I assume it had something to do with the warheads. Maybe they knew there was something wrong with them." "Maybe. Antimatter warheads can be dangerous to transport under some conditions." "Colleen, can you remind me of the frequency the starport transporters use? I need to filter out some background readings." She was absently staring at one of the nearby bodies. The fire suppression system had reacted quickly, but the man's remains had been mutilated and badly charred in the explosion. 152.1. Evan examined the Romulan again. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're certain none of your staff helped in loading the cargo?" She looked up, expression concerned. "My staff, as you call it, is 3 people, including myself. We were all together when the explosion occurred. That isn't uncommon. Most of our clients prefer to handle their own cargo." "Can you confirm their whereabouts? Security footage, computer records?" Yes, probably. Why?" "What have you found?" Evan shook his head. "I'm not sure yet." There was a long pause as the wind blew around them, and Evan continued his scans. That last had been a partial truth. He wasn't certain of the exact context, but what was clear is that someone had used a Raya transporter, likely one of the starports, to beam something on or off the pirates' ship moments before the explosion. He spent another hour collecting as much data as possible before finally allowing the bodies to be transported to the local medical clinic and the debris into an empty and secure warehouse nearby. After reporting the situation to the sheriff, who would in turn speak to the elders, Evan spent the rest of the day back in his apartment, poring over the data. It was early morning by the time his analysis was over, and Evan's eyelids felt heavy. Despite this, Evan knew he wouldn't be able to sleep that night. The Raya was an inherently peaceful group. They had no ships of their own, and few weapons beyond civilian-grade sidearms like the one he wore when he was on duty. There just wasn't any need for them. And that's what made his findings so disturbing. Why, in a settlement almost entirely populated by pacifist refugees, would anyone steal a shipment of photon torpedoes?
Hi, I'm Captain John Nugra, a risk assessment officer aboard the USS Athena. Today I have a great announcement. As you may have seen, the archive went offline for upgrades. Well, I'm happy to announce that as of this weekend, the archive is back up and running with the brand new 118 Sim Archive 2.0. You can go to sims.starbase118.net to see the brand new website. Now, there are a lot of new advantages here and new features that have been made available. 1, the website is much quicker loading. 2 is the search function now works and is able to look through all the ships, including inactive ships that haven't been around for a while. You can trace the entire history of the fleet through our sims. Going through the database myself, I found that there were sims dating back to 2000 that can now be easily read. Another amazing feature that is included is if you are reading a sim and discover an error, let's say it's a duplicate or there's some garbage in it from translation, whatever it is, there is an in-system sim reporting at the top of the page. You can click that link, fill out a really simple form, and then send it right in for the archivists to handle. Another thing that is out there, if you read the front page, you can now report bugs through a special page. There is also another page that you can go and put in your own feature ideas. Have an idea for a feature? Well, go to the main front page of the 118 archive and you can see a link to submit a feature request. The website is still being developed. What you're seeing is only the beginning of what we have planned. So, again, that's at sims.starbase118.net. Go there, take a look at our history, see the newest Sims came out, and enjoy the new features. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please don't hesitate to email me at nugra@starbase118.net. I will be happy to answer any questions you have, fill out the bug report or the feature request if you have something else along that line. So, please enjoy the brand new 118 archive.
Hi, my name is Commander Kelrod, the Chief of the Search and Rescue Team of the USS Veritas. I'd like to take this time to honor the members of the fleet who were promoted between the months of February 2394 and March 2394. On February, Ensign Mera to Lieutenant Junior Grade, Lieutenant Junior Grade Frank Hawkins to Lieutenant, Fleet Captain Renos to Rear Admiral, Ensign Femi Katan to Lieutenant Junior Grade, Ensign Hunter Stelling to Lieutenant Junior Grade, Lieutenant Saban to Lieutenant Commander, Lieutenant Odas Aria to Lieutenant Commander. On the month of March, Ensign Arturo Maxwell to Lieutenant Junior Grade, Ensign Theron Antradin to Lieutenant Junior Grade, and Lieutenant Junior Grade Aitas to Full Lieutenant. If you'd like to know more about these amazing characters, links to their pages can be found on the fleet roster on the Fleet's Wiki. Congratulations to all of those who were promoted. Well, this marks the end of the second podcast of 2394. I hope that you have enjoyed it and hope to find you again on the next podcast, that it will be a special one. See you soon.